Exciting, thrilling, awesome. Let's take a look.
What's up, Met fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets with Rob, right here with some breaking news regarding our New York Mets. The New York Mets have signed Tommy Pham, utility outfielder, for 1 year, $6 million. Let me just pull that up really quickly so we are ready to go and go into the details of everything of why the Mets ultimately signed Tommy Pham to a 1 year, $6 million deal instead of Duvall, instead of Mancini, instead of everybody else that we could have got, Jurickson, Profar, guys like that. And the reason for that is just, it's very simple, guys. The New York Mets wanted a guy who knew that he wasn't going to play every day, was going to be a fourth outfielder, is a guy who hits 17 home runs last year, and I'll put it up right over here in a second so I can show you guys what he did. So right there, Last year his average wasn't great. He batted 237 in 100. He had 554 at bats, 17 home runs with 63 RBIs. So it's nothing to go crazy about, but he did hit 17 home runs. His OPS is 686. His on-base percentage is 312. And again, you see what the Mets are trying to do here, right? A little bit more of on-base guy, a guy that has a little bit of pop in his bat. He's another guy that is in the range from 15 to 20 home runs. The Mets have a ton of guys that look like that. So again, I'm not necessarily happy with this deal, but the most important thing that you have to keep on looking at are what the Mets are doing with a lot of the contracts that they sign. And I'm not talking about the Edwin Diaz or the Brandon Nimmo's. Everybody who they signed this offseason, one, didn't have a qualifying offer. Two, are short-term deals. Guys that they don't want to give a long-term deal to, or even a 2 or 3 year deal to. So that's something that you just have to look at when it comes to why the Mets are going after guys like Tommy Pham. Again, he provides a little bit of speed. He can play all 3 outfield positions. Once again, another guy on the Mets, in the Mets lineup, that has between 15 to 20 home runs. He does have some power. Like, you'll be shocked to see a little bit more power from somebody. And you got to remember, for a guy that hit 17 home runs last year, he's going to be a 4th outfielder and probably platoons with Vogelback at DH. And that's something that we're going to talk about right here, is that me and Joe were talking about it a couple of minutes ago, about maybe the Tommy Pham signing is an indication that Darren Ruff is going to be gone from this team. So I think if you're replacing Pham with Ruff, I think we're okay. I think it would be a better offensive player than what Darren Ruff is. Darren Ruff, even if he is a guy that we thought we were going to get from the Giants, he's power and that's it. At least Tommy Pham, sprays the ball across the fields. He also provides a little bit of speed. Again, he has a little bit more power, plays 3 outfield positions. So that's something that the Mets always like. And you heard Billy Epler say yesterday in his press conference that he likes versatility. He likes guys that can play multiple positions, that you can put him anywhere in the lineup, because Tommy Pham, you can bat him at leadoff, you can bat him 9th, you can bat him in the middle of the order, around 6th or 7th, 5th or 6th or something like that. And John, that is a good point. Tommy Pham is very interesting. I was looking at his stats, and let me just bring that up really quick. 1 second. Give me 1 second. All right, let me just see something. It's one of the Tommy Pham postseason numbers. And Stoney, thank you for talking about that. I was looking at it right before I went on, and I stopped looking at it once I went live. So just give me 1 second, guys. All right, so here you go. Tommy Pham, 352 batting average, 19 hits, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, and 5 runs scored in 15 games in the postseason in his career. So he's experienced when it comes to playing in the postseason. He's batting 350 in the postseason. And we know what the problem was with the Mets. Yes, it was pitching, but the Mets also couldn't score as well. So that's something that you can also look at with Tommy Pham. So again, another signing by the Mets that is a short-term, low-risk, high-reward scenario, where Tommy Pham, if God forbid Marte or Canna or even Nimmo get hurt, Tommy Pham, we know, can play every single day because he had over 550 at-bats last year. So he can step in, and let's be honest, he can have around the same amount of power as anybody in the outfield in Canna, Marte, or Nimmo. They hit about the same amount of home runs. Average might be a little bit worse. Canna and Pham are basically 1-2 when it comes to average, home runs, RBIs. You're not going to get much from either of them, but they're very equal in that matter. So, there are both. It is interesting to see exactly what with Tommy Pham, exactly where the Mets are going to look at him. He is a right-handed batter as well. It would have been nice if the Mets got left-handed help in the the outfield at the corners. But at the end of the day, Tommy Pham is basically replacing Darren Ruff. And if the Mets do decide to keep Ruff on the roster, he'll be the backup first baseman for Pete Alonso. So that is something that you have to look at when it comes to Tommy Pham, is it necessarily who we wanted? I think a lot of people would wanted Duvall, a lot of people wanted Mancini, a lot of people wanted Drury. Some people recently wanted Profar. But the Mets like a guy like Tommy Pham because he's versatile. And you can bat him everywhere in the lineup. You can play him every outfield position. So that's something that the Mets are looking to, I guess, do. And again, the Mets' plan all along was to not give anybody long-term deals that they necessarily don't think should get a long-term deal. You got Verlander, all the bullpen arms are mostly 1 year, right? There's a lot of 1 year, 2 year deals here for the players that the Mets signed. So, it shouldn't be shocking that the Mets plan all along, obviously Nimmo and Edwin Diaz are on another level, but you got to remember, the whole Correa situation was all Steve Cohen. This wasn't Epler. This wasn't the front office. They're playing the entire time, and I think they're clearly setting it up for the 2023 into the 2024 offseason when Machado was going to opt out and Ohtani. They're setting up all these deals that are going to be off the table next year or would have 1 year deal left. They are setting it up for next offseason. It's just that obvious. Now, you can bitch, moan, and complain, including myself, was the fact that it seems like we're so worried about 2024 when we haven't even started 2023 yet. That's a little bit of an issue that I have with this whole plan that Epler and others in the front office have. And clearly, Steve Cohen, if he's not in on all this, he clearly went on a different route than Epler in the front office was going when he tried to sign Carlos Correa. So the plan was this whole time, short-term deals, low risk, high reward. It's not a lot of money. It's less than $10 million a year, 1 year, $6 million. And that's what the Mets have been doing all year. Bullpen arms, pitchers, like Carrasco, Quintana, guys like that are running on a 1 year deal. And that's something that you have to look at as well. So it's not like it's a huge deal that, no matter who you would have got. The problem with guys like Mancini and Duvall and Drury, these guys want to play every day. And I think that was the big reason why the Mets couldn't get him. Remember, and even Andrew McCutchen. The Mets was going to give more to Andrew McCutchen, but because the Mets couldn't promise him a starting role, McCutchen went to the Pirates. He's going to start every day there. And if Andrew McCutchen has a good first half, by the deadline, Pittsburgh is going to try to flip him for something of value. So that's where the Mets are kind of running into a problem with guys who we would rather have on this team as a fourth outfielder, as a DH, is that we could not promise starting roles to anybody that we all wanted. The Mancinis, the McCutchens, the Drurys, the Duvalls. We cannot guarantee playing time because we have a logjam, let's be honest. And, we can go crazy about Tommy Pham, and I see Christian put up about his bad attitude. Yeah, he has a bad attitude, but he also is going to bring that attitude onto the field. And I think sometimes the Mets seems to lack attitude on this team. It seemed like last year they were a really good team, but they seem way too much of a nice team. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that Pham brings that little grit, that little attitude to the table. And Christian, he does only care about his stats, but you know what? Care about his stats. That's fine with me. And remember, he said that while he was on Cincinnati, right? So he cares about his stats on Cincinnati because what that does, it gets him more money, more years, and it also gets him traded from a bad situation. So he was going to the Reds. He signed that that deal with the Reds just so he can pad his stats, get traded, which he did, even though he got traded to the Red Sox. But he would have been a guy that a lot of teams would have been looking for at the deadline if it wasn't for that altercation that he had with one of the Dodgers. I forgot his name. When they had that little altercation in the outfield, and that was right before the deadline was going to happen, and all of a sudden he wasn't very popular among teams to going out there. So there is a possibility that look, if you look at Tommy Pham's numbers, he's not going to blow you away with average, 230 average in his career. Let me just check really quick. His career average is, let's see, hold on, 259. So that's not terrible, right? He had a bad year average-wise last year. But, I mean, it's been like that for the last couple of years, ever since San Diego. He hasn't really had great average numbers. But, 230, 240, his strikeouts, he had 500. How many at-bats he had? He had 622 plate appearances, at-bats, 554. And he had 167 strikeouts. So it's not as many strikeouts as you might think. Anything that's like around 200 or more is usually where you start to worry. So he's not a huge strikeout guy. Stolen base wise, let's just see his speed. Not a lot. He had 8 stolen bases. He had 63 RBIs. And, people love to talk about guys like Correa, who always gets stuck in the 2 spot on most teams, was getting the 68 to 69 RBIs. Well, Tommy Pham, who a lot of people like him at the end of the lineup, 8th or 9th, or at the top of the lineup, which the Mets aren't going to have him do. He's a guy that hit 63 RBIs, and he was on 2 bad teams last year in the Reds and the Red Sox, and those guys are not really throwing people on base, getting people on base for them to score. So for him to get RBI opportunities. So I do think that the Mets are looking at it as this is a guy that, again, can add a little bit more pop. And again, if Tommy Pham is better than Vogelback and Ruff last year, then, or at least a combination of catcher, that I think Omar Narvaez is going to be much better offensively than James McCann. And then if you got anything from the DH, which Pham is going to be a part of that DH platoon. And if the Mets do get rid of Ruff, you're going to have the Vogelback Pham DH platoon, which I like a lot better because Pham isn't a big strikeout guy. Vogelback is not a big strikeout guy. They do put the bat on the ball, even though Vogelback has a higher on-base percentage. They put the bat on the ball. Well, Justin, it's not about the older players. Well, you got to look at what the plan is, and the plan that they have. They're setting everything up with quality, decent, good players for the 2024 offseason. You know how much money comes off the books after this year? That's what they're doing. They're not giving any long-term deals to anybody. Remember, Correa was all Steve Cohen. This wasn't the Billy Epler front office plan that they were clearly going after in the start of the offseason. They're giving a lot of short-term deals that don't have qualifying offers because they're setting it up for next offseason for the Machado Ohtani sweepstakes. That's what they're doing here. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that because it seems like they're so concerned about 2024 when 2023 is staring in front of their face. But it's not like these guys are bad players, right? What move have the Mets made that you question, right? We got to remember, Correa was all Steve Cohen. Remember, Steve Cohen, he has to look bad in that scenario because he put the cart in front of the horse. That's what he did, right? He spoke up. He said this was the missing piece we needed before he even made that deal official. He messed that up, right? This wasn't an Epler situation, even though most people would have liked Correa. Let's be honest. This wasn't the plan all along with the Mets. These were the type of players that were left on the market if Correa would have just signed with the Dodgers. We would have went through all this stupid nonsense over the last 3 weeks with Carlos Correa. So, again, if you look at Pham's numbers, he's just as good as Mark Canha, right? You can look at it that way. He'll probably put up better numbers than any of the DH guys that the Mets currently have in Vogelback and Ruff. So that right there, you're already upgrading those areas. And he does provide a little bit of speed as well. Again, it's not like Pham was my first choice. He wasn't amongst all the players that were left, minus Correa, right? The Mancinis, the McCutchens, the Duvals, the Drurys, guys like that. But those guys, the Drury, Duvall, McCutchen, Mancini, they all wanted to play every day. They wanted a start and roll on a team. The Mets could not promise that. Pham is willing, as you can see, with a 1 year, $6 million. He is the guy that is willing to be the fourth outfielder, platoon all around through the outfield, give a little bit of rest to Marte when he needs it to keep him healthy, give a little bit of rest for Canna when you want a little bit better defense, which Pham provides, and is a little bit more better offensively than Mark Canna. So that's something that you also have to look at as well. Again, not saying that Pham is, he's going to be great, but he is also a gritty guy that he pisses off a lot of people from other teams, right? Other people, when you play against him, you can't stand them, right? But when he's on your team, and again, we are looking at it from the point where he was like, I'm going to pad my stats and, I'm going to look out for me. You got to remember, he signed with the Reds when nobody was willing to sign him. He signed with the Reds for a 1 year deal, and they got traded to the Red Sox. So, of course, he's going to pay the stats. But let's be honest. Tommy Pham said what every player is thinking, right? Let's be honest about that. Again, he's not very good. But he's a lot. If you look at it this way, he had better numbers than Trey Mancini, right? Last year, people were going crazy about getting Adam Duvall. Adam Duvall was the one guy last year who missed time last year because of injury and wrist injury to that point as well. He had a wrist injury. That was a problem. That cost him. So, no, Justin. No. You see, people are going to just, bow down to Cohen when this was Cohen's baby with Correa. This had nothing to do with Epler. This is why Epler did not say nothing yesterday in the press conference. Because if I was Epler, I would be pissed too. Cohen said when he took over this team, he's going to hire people to do the job. When your owner, and that's why I brought up yesterday that Cohen did a James Dolan type of thing where James Dolan went above his GM, above the front office, and get the guy he wanted. And then when it fails, you can't blame Epler for that because that was Cohen putting the cart before the horse and not doing his due diligence and looking like a fool. Cohen has egg on his face, not Epler. This wasn't Epler with Correa. So, there's a lot of people that are not going to say anything bad about Cohen because, he spends the money, he does this. Cohen made a boo-boo. That's what he did. He made a big boo-boo. And listen, we all still love Cohen. We know he's going to spend the money, but let's be honest. Cohen screwed up with the Correa situation. He saw the opportunity where the Giants were, dragging their feet with Correa. He agreed to a deal with Correa before, because he probably thought that the Giants were just getting cold feet. They missed out on Judge, and Correa, even if they would have gave him that 13-year deal, knowing that Correa wasn't going to make the difference with them in the Giants in a division where they're with the Padres and the Dodgers. So maybe Cohen thought, hey, listen, the Giants probably got cold feet, don't want to pay all this money for a guy like Correa when they're not going to compete with Correa because Correa isn't the guy that you put on a team that doesn't have any other thing around them, and that was basically the Giants. So I think Cohen thought the Giants got cold feet. They're just using the medical as an excuse. Cohen screwed up there, and that's about it. And with this Tommy Pham thing, it's exactly what the Mets' plan was all along prior to Correa. Short-term deals, setting themselves up. And it's not like, Pham is, let's be honest. I'll say this right away. Pham is going to be better than Vogelback and better than Darren Ruff and probably better than Canna. So you're getting a deal. You're getting a player that, Grant's putting some numbers up there too. He hits the ball almost 50% of the time. Hard hit balls. And again, his on base percentage is pretty good. He's versatile. If you notice, the Mets have a lot of versatile guys. Escobar in a crunch can play second base as well. Canna can play all three outfield positions. Pham can. Marte can. Even Nimmo. Justin, but again, you're looking at it completely different. Because, you just think every player that's not named Correa or Ohtani or Machado are complete garbage, right? Tommy Pham has similar numbers to Canna and Escobar and a couple other players on a team. Better numbers than Vogelback, better numbers than Ruff, better numbers than the catchers. So it's not like he's that bad. We're not saying that he's an all-star. But 17 home runs with 63 RBIs, and he played on the Reds and the Red Sox. That's pretty damn good if you really think about it. That's actually pretty good considering the fact that he was on a terrible team. And those 17 home runs, if he actually had any competent people to actually get on base for him, he might have 75 RBIs. He's not a great player. Again, he wouldn't have been my third choice. But look what the plan was prior to Correa. Well, Justin, Cohen does not run the media, clearly, because he opened his mouth to John Heyman to break the story on December 21st, right? Cohen, look, Justin, you're not going to say anything bad about Cohen, but Cohen screwed up big time because he didn't do his due diligence, and then, making it seem like, he came out with that statement after Correa signed with the Twins, and he should be mad because, you know what? He screwed up, and Cohen's the type of guy, and he's the same way in business. But Justin, Cohen did not take the heat off Epler. Epler had nothing to do with it. You're so hard on Cohen, it's hilarious. Epler had nothing to do with this. That's why Epler had no comment the other day on the press conference, because Cohen made this all about him and Correa. That was all Cohen with that. That was not Epler at all. Because if this was Epler, Correa would have never been even in the thoughts of Met fans. Cohen, without thinking of anything, didn't care about the medicals at that point. All of a sudden, if Cohen didn't really care, he should have signed Correa to that deal and go about his business. But Cohen actually was like, whoa, maybe we shouldn't give this guy 12 years. Right? There's too many people that are not giving any blame to Cohen with this Correa thing. If Cohen didn't care about the medicals, then he would have signed him to the 12-year, $350 million deal. And, people act like, Tommy Pham is just a scrub. He's not. And in SoCal, exactly. That's what I was just talking about earlier. Tommy Pham, a lot of players don't like him. There's a lot of players around baseball that are not liked by other teams, but when he's on your team, everybody loves him. You know why? Because he doesn't care, right? You saw SoCal said he bitch slapped Jock Peterson for a fantasy thing, right? That's a guy that doesn't play, right? He's not a great player. Yeah, but Justin, you see, this is where you're completely wrong. You see, Justin, you don't even know what you're talking about. Did you not hear what all the reports were? Scott Boras texted Steve Cohen, and Steve Cohen confirmed this when the Giants were dragging their feet. Boras sent a text to him saying, are you available? Are you looking for the 3 olives? You want to add some 3 olives to that drink, right? And that's when they started talking. This had nothing to do with Epler. You see, Justin, get your facts straight before you come on this channel and keep on, you're talking about getting his dick sucked in Hawaii. Well, you're on Cohen's dick, right? That's what you're doing right now. So you're in that whole aspect of, oh, Cohen cannot do anything wrong when he was the one who set this all up with Boris. Epler and the front office of the Mets found out when everybody else found out. And that's where people just don't understand. And you keep on talking about it. There was all reports that Boris texted Cohen from Hawaii. And that's when they had the conversation. That's why this deal went down at 2:30 in the morning, because in Hawaii, it was the middle of the afternoon when that went down. I'm not obsessed because people are opening up their mouths about Correa. And, I don't like people who, the same people who like the prospect hug, you got to give blame where it's due. We blame Epler for the trade deadline last year, right? Because he screwed up. You want to blame Epler on that? Absolutely. But I don't hear anybody talking about blaming Epler when they signed Ottavino, when they signed Robinson, when they made sure they got Diaz done, when they brought in Raley in that trade, when they signed Verlander, when they re-signed Nimmo. I don't hear nobody talking about bitching about Epler now, right? Because clearly that was good moves. You got to replace Jacob deGrom. You got Justin Verlander, who just won a Cy Young. Why ain't anybody killing Epler now? You can't kill Epler about this because this was the plan all along. Short-term deals, a lot of money coming off the books for next offseason when the Ohtani Machado sweepstakes are going to go down. And I agree, Joe. I don't like Epler necessarily either, but there isn't a lot that Epler has done wrong minus the trade deadline, which is big for me. But last offseason, everybody was praising everybody, right? Everybody was like, oh, look what Epler did. And there you go, right? Excuse me. So last offseason was pretty good. Well, SoCal, it's not that I'm obsessed with Correa, but when people keep on bringing it up, like, people don't like to blame Cohen because we act like we're not going to hurt his feelings or something like that. Listen, you criticize when there's blame. When there's something to criticize, you can criticize somebody, even the owner. Cohen's not perfect, right? Let's be honest. So, it's not fair to just put all the blame on Epler when he had nothing to do with that. Cohen probably locked the door and let Epler stay outside when it came to the Correa situation. Getting Correa or not, the whole point was that wasn't the plan, and Cohen deviated from that plan and went over his own front office's head, which he's allowed to, but he did a James Dolan here. But the difference was James Dolan usually gets the guy he wants, even though it's a disaster. Cohen did not get his guy. So, yes, Cohen failed. Let's see. Oh, yeah, Grant, I did see that about the catching prospects, number 1 and number 3. Yeah, that's I'm telling you, it's still very odd that the Mets drafted one of the highest touted catchers in the draft, because there was a couple of teams that didn't think the Mets were going to take him because they were the ones that wanted him. And the Mets took him. And remember, when the Mets made that draft pick last year, everybody was like, oh, are they going to trade Alvarez? Because I've said this on this channel numerous times. Kevin Parada is going to be a better overall player than Francisco Alvarez. I don't think Alvarez is going to hit for average. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to strike out a lot. He'll hit his home runs, absolutely. And, the RBIs will come with it. But I don't know, for a guy who's a number 1 prospect in all of baseball, he should be better defensively. He should hit better for average. And he strikes out a lot. Look at his numbers. So for a guy who's a number 1 ranked prospect in all of baseball, 3 things that in, your whole 5-tool player type of situation, right? You think of a number 1 prospect. What do you think of right away as your number one overall prospect in baseball, a 5-tool player. So that means defense is good, power, average, right? Everything that you see as a 5-tool player, right? Is Alvarez going to be as good as Julio Rodriguez? Is he going to be as good as other players that came up and showed what they can do? Because I don't think Alvarez is going to be what everybody thinks he's going to be. I think he's going to be a guy who hits for power, where the RBIs are going to come along. And now we're looking at the fact that Kevin Parada is already one of the top prospects in baseball and is already in the top 100. And now the Mets, have Alvarez, and the Mets don't even know what to do with Alvarez, right? They're not going to make him the everyday DH because that stops him from getting better catching wise. Maybe Omar Narvaez is a guy that can help Alvarez, which he talked about in his press conference yesterday when the deal was official with Narvaez and Ottavino. Maybe that would help him, but is that going to make him a better catcher? Who knows? But as a number one overall prospect in baseball, you should be better in more areas than what Alvarez currently is. And I think that's why when people are looking at it, Kevin Parada is on the fast track to Major League Baseball. Guaranteed. And it shows already with him being in the top 100 of MLB prospects and already knocking on the door of the top 5 in the Mets prospect list. And yes, I've seen more news. Hold on. Excuse me. I see everybody talking about Chafin right now. The Mets are close to signing Chafin. That's John Morosi. All right, here we go. John Heyman. Andrew Chafin market heating up now. Mets are among teams in on one of the top lefty relievers. Also, Zach Britton. So, all right. So, that's the other news that's going on right now. Tommy Pham signs a 1-year deal, $6 million, which is the direct plan of the Mets the entire offseason. Short-term deals that could give high rewards, but there is no big risk involved in those short-term deals. It all sets up for 2024 with a ton of money off the books. More of these 1-year deals. I'm assuming Chafin is probably going to get a 1 or a 2-year deal from either the Mets or another team. I think the Mets need to get Chafin. We talked about this over and over again. The New York Mets need to get Andrew Chafin. One, because you get that second lefty along with Raleigh. And on top of that, if it takes 2 years to get Chafin, you have to do that. The Mets haven't been much inclined to give 2-year deals other than Edwin Diaz in the bullpen. But if they need to give that extra year, they better do it to get Chafin because that makes this bullpen extremely good. Now, on paper, it looks extremely good. You never know what can happen as bullpens are very volatile, and we all know that. So right now, we know Tommy Pham is a Met. There goes your fourth outfielder who's probably going to platoon with Vogelback and possibly Ruff as well at the DH spot. And this all comes back to the fact that Francisco Alvarez is probably not going to start in the major leagues in 2023. Now, if he rakes in AAA, then you got to bring him up. You can't leave him down there. So, with that, you just have to look at it as, all right, Alvarez, there's not a lot of room and there's not a lot of at-bats to give Alvarez. So you can't leave him on the major league roster and not get him at-bats and not catch him games either when you got Nito and Narvaez. So this all leads to Alvarez being in the minor leagues to work on his game a little bit more defensively. And if he shows that he improved defensively and is raking in the minors, then you just have to bring him up. But at the moment, it looks like more Brett Beatty as a possibility who's going to be either going to fight it out with Escobar, or Beatty's going to be on this roster as a platoon guy, but don't be shocked if Beatty is also in the minor leagues to start the year as well, because the roster is getting tighter and tighter. You can only carry 26 guys. So we'll see. The Mets got a lot of decisions to make, and it's going to be very interesting when it comes to. Sorry, guys. Did something happen? Hold on. Hold on. Alrighty. Sorry, I'm just checking something. I thought I got some. All right, let's see if there's anything with Chafin. All right. Okay, so at the moment right now, guys, we got Tommy Pham 1 year, $6 million, and just a couple of reports with John Heyman, Andy Martino, and John Morosi on MLB Network just said that the Mets are heavily in pursuit of Andrew Chafin. Finally, because we've been talking about this since the beginning of the offseason, the Mets made a lot of good moves with the bullpen, re-signing Edwin Diaz, bringing back Ottavino, Robinson, Raley, hold on, I'm trying to think of all the names here. Who else do we get here? You're going to have Drew Smith back. You're also going to have either Peterson and McGill, possibly guys in the bullpen as well. One of those guys are probably going to end up in the minors, considering the fact that you need depth in the rotation and you need a guy to stretch out his arm. And the only way to do that is putting them in the minors. So that's something that you have to look at as well. Getting Andrew Chafin, it makes the bullpen a lot tighter. At the moment, you really don't have a long man. So either Peterson or McGill are going to be probably that long man, and spot starts here or there, double headers, all that fun stuff. Well, Justin, I have faith, but you also had the Mets draft one of the top catchers in college last offseason when they had the number 1 ranked prospect in all of baseball. So, again, we're in this aspect of let's bring up all the hype. There's a lot of number 1 overall prospects that have been complete bust as well. So let's not act like Alvarez is just going to be this awesome player. And of course, the Mets have to get a top ranked prospect who is a catcher. And he's not even that good of a catcher at that. Can he get better? Let's hope so. Because, in my opinion, number 1 overall prospects should be a 5-2 player. Alvarez is not a 5-2 player. He got through the minors, because of his bat, not defensive capabilities. So, if he gets better defensively, I'm not saying he's going to be Gary Sanchez. Let's hope not. But if he's an average catcher, he does got an arm behind the plate, which is good, especially with the new rules. A lot more stolen bases could happen. But let's not act like Alvarez is going to be on this team, probably, most likely, because of the fact you got Navarez and Nito. And where is Alvarez going to get playing time? You got all these guys that could be the DH, so Alvarez is not going to get plate appearances. This guy's not going to get better if he doesn't play. So he's going to end up in AAA. The only way he might not end up in AAA is if he does what Pete Alonso did in 2019, right? Pete Alonso, remember, the Mets weren't going to bring up Pete Alonso in 2019 until Pete Alonso went crazy in spring training offensively, and the Mets had no choice. If Alvarez doesn't give a Mets a choice, well, you got to bring him up, right? It all comes down to how they perform in spring training, because they have options. And there's no reason to bring these guys up and rush them when you don't have to, especially if the guys on your roster are performing to what you expect them to do. That's actually interesting too. With Luke Casey, coming back from the Tommy John surgery, he's another guy, right? Another lefty, and he can. I think of it as this: Peterson, McGill, Luke Casey, Carrasco. Make them fight it out for the 5th spot. I love competition. Competition always makes it better. You're paying $14 million to Carrasco, but if money is not an issue, then Carrasco shouldn't just be given the job in the 5th spot, because there's a pretty good chance that Peterson and McGill might be better. Possibly Luke Casey might be better than Carlos Carrasco. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Mets give an opportunity or keep that fifth spot open, and whoever has the best spring training, give them the opportunity to start as the fifth starter. And you guys already know the first week or two of the season, you usually, with off days and stuff like that, you usually don't use your fifth starter until like week 2 of the season. So, you never know about weather. You might have rain delays or, double headers that you're going to have to use those guys. But competition is good. Make your fifth starter available to anybody who has the best spring training for the fifth spot and give it to him. And then decide what you're going to do. Because Carrasco, is the veteran. He don't have an option. So he's going to be on this roster. You can't send him down to the minors unless you get his approval because it's not an injury. So Carrasco is either going to be the fifth guy in the rotation or he's going to be a long man in the bullpen. And even if he doesn't have a great spring training, he's going to be on this team. So it's just a matter of what are you going to do with him? Fifth spot or bullpen? But that's something that we just have to wait and see. We don't have a crystal ball to see who's going to perform well in spring training. So as of right now, we're waiting for news. If the Mets are going to sign Andrew Chafin, I think the Mets will probably love to give Andrew Chafin a 1-year deal, but I guarantee you there's probably a 2-year deal out there for him. The Mets cannot let Chafin get away from them. If you got to give him that 2-year deal, suck it up and get him in this bullpen. It solidifies the bullpen. Your bullpen is basically set, and having a bullpen that is deep as the Mets bullpen is, if they land Chafin, it makes the starters, especially Scherzer and Verlander, you don't have to make them go crazy early on in the year. When you want to push them that extra inning, you don't have to because you got a stacked bullpen, and that's only going to help you later down the stretch when you're going to need your starters to go that extra inning or two later in the year. So as of right now, Mets signed 1 year, $6 million to Tommy Pham. The Mets roster is basically set at this point. Position player wise, the Mets might make a move here or there. Maybe Ruff is here or Ruff is off this team, or the Mets might keep Ruff around and maybe be a backup first baseman for Pete Alonso, once every 3 weeks or something like that. So, I haven't looked at the Mets. I'm assuming they're around the 40 man mark on their roster, and the 26 man, I'm assuming, depending on the way you look at the roster, I really have to do a deep dive into the roster to see what guys are going to be on the 26-man roster, because there's only 1 or 2 spots that you can kind of think of. Could it be this guy? Could it be that guy? So that's something that you have to look closely at, and I'll do that in the coming days. So once I go live again, we'll have a better understanding of what's going on with that. But the roster is mostly finalized. The Mets are clearly looking for another bullpen arm. The bats are done. That's it. Pham is the last guy you're getting. So whatever position player that we have right now, you can kind of look in a nutshell what position players are going to be on this team. Alvarez and Beatty are probably still in question. Even Vientos might be a question as well. But that's probably going to take spring training to figure that one out. If the Mets get Chafin, the bullpen is probably set as well. So I don't think it's, we're going to be waiting for, what is it? Not even a month. We're 28 days away until pitchers and catchers report. So we're less than a month away, and we're a little more than a month away until the first game of the season of spring training. And yes, I will be out there for spring training, and we'll be out there in Miami for opening day with the 7-Line Army. So that's going to be fun. So with that said, guys, breaking news. If you're just tuning in, Mets signed Tommy Pham, 1 year, $6 million. Another short-term deal added to this roster, which all sets up for 2024 and that offseason after the 2023 season for the Ohtani Machado sweepstakes. And it's clearly setting up for that. And that's what the Mets are clearly setting up for. Again, prior to this offseason, the Mets were going to have around $80 to $100 million off the books. And then adding a couple of guys with 1-2 year deals or 1 year deals, those guys are going to be coming off the books too. So the Mets can have anywhere from $100 to $135 million coming off the books next year when two guys that they're probably going to go after in Ohtani, most likely, and Machado. And remember, guys, Brett Beatty can play left field if you really need him to. So pay attention to where the Mets play Beatty in spring training. They might play him in third base and left field. And maybe when he gets to the minors, the Mets can actually put him in left field as well to make him work on his defensive game there. And if the Mets are really serious about going after Machado and Ohtani, because they will have a lot of money coming off the books, they can easily sign Ohtani and Machado for $85 million per year, combined. Everybody thinks that Ohtani is going to be the first $500 million player. Is he going to get a 10-year, $500 million deal? And there's a pretty good chance that Machado, if he's opting out, is probably looking for somewhere around $30 million as well. And he's only 30 years old. So Machado could get a 7-8 year deal. And Machado had a great year last year. And he shows no signs of slowing down. And he's one of the best defensive players in baseball at third base. So we'll see where we're at. But the Mets are clearly using the short-term deals to set up for 2024 with still being extremely competitive and contenders. One in the NL East and a playoff team. And again, we see it every year. We look at the teams that are the most talented on paper. Yet, it seems like the team that always gets hot in one of the leagues that go on a run. So it's not necessarily who you have, as a complete way to look at it when it comes to, you look at a team like on paper, this team ain't going to go far. Well, you don't know that because the Braves and the Phillies looked like they weren't going to go far the last 2 years. And in 2021, the Braves got hot at the end of the year and took them to a World Series the same way the Phillies got hot at the right time and took them to get to a World Series. So we'll see what the Mets are going to do, but the Mets are leaving themselves open at the trade deadline. If they need a bat, if they need an arm, whatever, they're setting themselves up for a trade deadline plan. If they need something, they will get it at the trade deadline, and also setting up for next offseason with the Ohtani Machado sweepstakes. So with that said, guys, there's a pretty good chance if the Mets do sign Chafin, I might come back online, or I'll just do a Mets hot stove tonight and just going over the Pham and possible Chafin signing if that happens. So with that said, everybody have a great night. Probably we'll see you again tonight. We'll see. Chafin signs, I'll probably pop back on. That seems like another fun breaking news story for all of us. So once again, guys, just tuning in. And for everybody who's going to replay this video live stream later, Mets signed Tommy Pham 1 year, $6 million for their fourth outfielder / DH. So a guy that can play all over the outfield, can DH, provide a little bit of speed and very good defense in the outfield. So everybody have a good day. Thank you for tuning in to the breaking news with Tommy Pham. See you maybe once again for another breaking news with Andrew Chafin later, and a possibility of Mets Hot Stove live tonight, 6 p.m. See you next time, guys. Have a good night.
You'll find a Mets fan. Let's go. is a Mets here. For all your Mets here.